Okay, welcome everybody. Let's see, any more thoughts about drama states? I thought we had a really good conversation last week.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I promptly
Yeah.
got off this phone call and then had a very challenging one where I turned it into a complete drama state jerk. I need a lot of practice, it turns out.
Yeah, it's so important for all of us that we need to practice more.
Indeed.
It's a big deal, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep, I was just like, why didn't I just plant my feet and just breathe for a minute instead of like, and it could have been worse, I have to say, like
Could have been worse.
I arrived in a better place, but it was not ultimately
Wow.
green storyline and the end outcome that I was hoping to
What's
achieve.
what's the stress factor here with these folks?
The stress factor,
What's causing all this? Usually there's some social context, in stress.
I think it's very similar for both of us, actually. I would say for me, it's holding people accountable, but doing it in a way that's, I don't know, more effective than I've done in the past.
yeah.
Yours may be a little different, but
This one was probably like, I'm just thinking about like, where would this have come from me, right? Not thinking about the other person. Probably a little bit of fear. I'm newer in the organization still.
Yeah.
And we had a plan to do something a specific way. And I found out through another individual who it's not their job to communicate this to me, that it was not being done in the way that we all had agreed and had clear agreement to. And so unfortunately, I kind of shot the messenger. It's not his job to communicate these things. And he was just, thank goodness he did, actually, because I caught some things that shouldn't have been happening. But I think ultimately it was fear of maybe loss of control. I don't know. But either way.
I remember this conversation.
Yeah, I was like, oh man, I shot the messenger. So I ended up cleaning it up the next day. Like I apologized to him and cleaned it up just because I respect this person. I really want to have a good relationship with him. But it came up and it was like, what is wrong with me? That was not even the person to hold accountable for this.
By the way, when I had the 4D company running, we had a weekly telecon like this, and we had an agreement that if you weren't there at the start, you would do a $5 tip the next time you were out and report on what you did. And so what I really remember is a guy named Noel Henners, who was a good friend of Frank and I, and a very splendid person. He talked about the fact that he was in the airport in the men's room, and a janitor was cleaning the place, and he walked up and handed the guy $5, and the guy was just like, beside himself that someone would express appreciation that way. So do you want to do this? If we're more than 1 minute late, we'll do a $5 tip next time we get a chance.
Like that.
Everybody want to do this?
Yeah. And Charlie, if you remember, I'm with you for a long time. So I remember those discussions when we were giving $5. Back then, $5 was probably more than that before inflation. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that sanctions are useful, especially if they're agreed to and they're voluntary, and so if we were all in proximity, we might have had a jar on the table or something, but we're not. Just like this, we're all spread around and doing maybe just telecons. I don't think we used Zoom in the earliest days. Just telecons.
Right. Yep.
I did pick up on Zoom before COVID, but just because somebody recommended it.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on drama? This is the magnet that pulls us into this, I think, is another thing that probably comes from a time of true helplessness from childhood. This sort of habit of dealing with stress this way. And
Christine, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Nico.
Okay, just want to go without the earphones. Obviously drama, I mean, it's when you're aware of it and you can have like a simplified tools to recognize it. All of it creates awareness. I mean, it's like reading a book and
Right.
but the challenge is to integrate it into your behavior. You know, it's just not like recognizing it. What difference is gonna make in future?
Many people that did workshops said to me the most powerful thing was being able to name things that they experienced that didn't know how to name. And once you can name it, that's a long way toward dealing with it.
It's actually very helpful. I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go one step further, Charlie, if okay with you. Very short, but I feel like celebrating today. And you probably will have a laugh at me, but I got my divorce certificate this morning.
Good day of independence.
Congratulations.
The divorce happened 10 years ago,
Oh
Wow.
my.
so I didn't need it. Now for something at the university, I had to submit something, etc. And I went there, and what the procedure. I could have had so many features of drama this morning that you can't believe it. But I just stayed in the celebration phase, but it was quite intense and a test for the drama feature.
Good.
So
Good to hear.
So, so Charlie, in retrospect, I was like, got out of that and had, I don't know, an hour or two. And I was like, what in the heck is my problem? I can't believe I literally got off this very constructive call about drama states. And I literally just like on the next hour was like in one. And so I guess my question is like, how do you, and is it just practice over the years of like when you can just start to feel it in your body? Because that's the right, you start to feel lousy,
Yeah,
like you
yeah,
start to feel
yeah.
hot or whatever it is. Like, are you just that much better now at starting to detect when it's coming up? Or is there some other recommendation you might have on detecting this in the moment?
Well, I would say in the moment, I don't know anyone can detect it immediately. It takes a little time, I think. When you're engaged fully in it, I think you're probably just in capture. I think maybe again, maybe it depends on which one, but to me, the one that's the most difficult to exit is the blamer, because when you're in that state, you're absolutely certain and absolutely wrong. Let me close the door here. That's for me, that one
while
takes
we're waiting, Darinka, we need your wisdom, yeah.
takes some time. So, but I think they're all different. I think the rescuer, you've got to get out of that field. You got to say, here it comes. I don't think, you know, in fully in the field of it, I don't know anyone can do anything. But if you have a spat with your gnat or something, I think separate and stop.
Yeah.
And then pay attention. I think that I don't know a way that, you know, the second it happens, you go, that's drama, kaboom, I'm out. I think you got to take a breather and that's why I think it's really I think you said it. It's an awareness thing, and I'm reminded of a story. The people who taught me about the somatic psychology, the guy describes he and his wife do this work together. Describes picking her up for a date, their first date, and she gets in the car and she starts bitching about something. And he says, "I'm taking you back home. Date's over." What? Says, "Well, I'm going to live with someone who wants to live and have fun. You obviously aren't interested in that." And that got him into the whole idea of how do you feel? If you feel lousy, you're probably in one of these states and you don't want to be in it. There's nothing, all of them have ill effects on energy and health. They're all unhealthy.
Yeah.
Just like you attend to what you eat, attend to what you feel and think.
Yeah, Charlie, and if possible, I don't know if this is too much to ask, but my 4D request would be I would be really grateful for a few case studies that you would be really kindly go through with us. So because I'm sure you have some classical case study examples for your students. So I would be really grateful to learn from you based on specific case studies. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I make a 4D request a couple times a year when I need to for something. There's a lot of angst in Colorado about the evaluations of property. Apparently we had a law in the books. We have something a little bit like the California Proposition 13 called TABOR, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, that limits taxation. And apparently there was a limitation in there about how residential property rates could be increased. And we had an amendment, which I don't know if I voted for or not, because I don't remember. Someone else told me this. We had an amendment about a year ago where the argument was made that the state was taxing businesses at a much higher rate than residential properties because of this law. So apparently we had an amendment and repealed that aspect. So people are apoplectic here recently about the fact that, you know, my daughter, who lives in probably a small house in the cheapest part of Boulder, called me up and said, "Dad, I've got good news. I'm a millionaire. My house was just appraised at $1 million. This is a house that I bought 15, 20 years ago for $100,000 and gave her."
Still too high.
So people are writing letters about this, and I said, "Here's what you have to do. The way if you want to succeed at this, you're not going to succeed with a completely logical argument, because what you can say is, you know, my house didn't go up that much, my neighborhood's not that great, blah blah blah." And what they're going to say back to you is that we based it on comparable properties, and unless you can find comparable properties that are you know, that were wrong in our analysis, and that's not easy to do. And the reason they're going to not want to do this is it's kind of like breaking the dam. If they start giving in to the person who write the letters, guys say, "Well, my neighbor, I got my house down, got my reduction." People get mad and they're going to start complaining. I said, what you got to do is you got to approach this from a social context and this sort of confirmation bias. You've got to make them want to do this. So you write the letter saying, I really appreciate the job you people do. I mean, having accurate valuations on properties is in the common good. We all need this. We need to pay taxes, need to do them fairly. And now you can appreciate the circumstance. I really appreciate the fact that there are probably a lot of people writing to you, complaining about this, and makes your job even harder. And thank you for being willing to stay in a job that has so much of this kind of negative energy in it. So now we've appreciated them. Now you go to include, I'd like to work with you to make sure my property is fairly evaluated according to your guidelines, because I want to pay my share of taxes. And so you take out the red storyline they're probably running that you don't want to pay taxes. Now you include them. I want to work with you. Now you can go up in division and say, I think there are some compelling features that differentiate my property from the norm. And I would talk about this neighborhood. I told my neighbor to do this. I said, you know, the first thing is that all the trees are burned down because we had a fire. The second thing is, when these houses were built, they were near Route 36, but they were built 30 years ago. At that time, Route 36 was a country road. Now, when you go sell one of these properties, the thing people say to you is, look at the traffic noise. Route 36 has become a major highway now with constant traffic. And the next thing is that since these houses were built and originally assessed, the schools have been redistricted. And most people come here with families and want to go to the best schools. And Boulder has excellent schools. And the rural district we're in is a lousy school district. And so the houses that you've been, what's in fourthly, this is a wildlife environment here. The yards are full of rattlesnakes in the summer. There's bears here frequently on our decks. There's mountain lions go through here. Kids can't play outdoors. So I think the comp that you've been using don't have any of these problems because I've looked at them. And so so now you've sort of made a vision and say, now you make a request and say, if you would reduce my valuation in accordance with these factors 20%, I would think it would be fair and I would appreciate you doing that. So we'll see how this works out, but that's the way I would do it. And I think, you know, try it on the airplane. So my friend Ian Sharp used to come from Australia and do 4D workshops with me. In fact, you might have met Ian, Nico. He did quite a few workshops. He did it because he liked the 4D work,
Yeah,
he liked learning, doing it with me.
We're still in close contact. He's a wonderful chap,
Yeah,
really.
okay. Yeah, he is. So the problem is that I have to, there's no way I'm going to try and charge Jet Propulsion Lab for airfare from Australia. I mean, they're not going to pay it. So I end up paying his airfare out of my own pocket for him because I want this to not cost him money. Once he gets here, I charge his travel from the Los Angeles airport and all that, and that's all fine. So I told him, I said, I can't afford to buy you a business class ticket. So here's what he does. He sits there by the gate and watches. And what he waits until a bunch of people have given the gate attendant a bunch of shit. And then he walks up there and said, you know, I really appreciate people like you. I'm telling you, these people are attacking you for something you have absolutely no control over. The fact this plane is late or whatever's going on. He listens in and says, and you take this like a complete professional. I'm jealous of your capacity to deal with stress and strife because I couldn't do what you do. And then he's checked the appreciation box. Then he checks the inclusion box. Said, you know, I've taken this flight and I'm going to be traveling to the US to do this workshop at NASA. And the guy who brings me over is too cheap to pay for a business class ticket for me, and I've got to ride an animal class. He also makes me work the next day after I arrive. It's a 16-hour flight. And so I have to get up with the time change and the long trip and go perform on a stage basically. So he's done and he says, you know, could you work with me to help me be a little more effective and make things a little more convenient? Now he's made an inclusion request. He said, what I'm thinking is if you had a row in the plane someplace with three seats together, and you could put me in there, I could lie down and sleep and do my job when I get to the US. Can you find something like that, please? And they always do it. He gets the row, that gets the 3 seats, lies down, goes to sleep. So,
Wow.
you know, so I think it and he reports it works every time. If they have it, you'll get it. I tell people, don't go up to United and ask for an upgrade to first class because they can't do it. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they could do it, but now it's all on the computer. It's all done by, you know, the upgrades, or people have upgrades that they, like people like me, would ask for, and you're in a queue and the computer does it. So don't ask people for something they can't give you, but that's something they can certainly do. And they scan it. It's typically a big jet like a 747, and someplace in there's a row of empty seats. So you know, I think it's got to be something that matters enough to make the effort. I don't routinely make 4D requests about everything, but I experiment with this. You know, someone at work, whatever, experiment with it, and the logic of it I find just beautifully simple. It's about the needs hierarchy. people have needs. They start with appreciation, they go to inclusion and up the line. And if you just tick off people's needs, they feel obliged to you. And remember that the power of requests, people want to honor requests. By the way, another example, when I go into a Marriott, I'll walk in the door and I'll walk up to the front counter. And usually the people that do the front counters are trained to greet you with a big smile. So the first thing I'll say is, wow, what a great smile. Boy, you've made my day. That's beautiful. I love that. And now they're hooked. Okay. Now you say, by the way, I'm now a titanium elite member with Marriott. I used to be platinum, and I told them that kind of pisses me off. Platinum is valuable enough to make rings with, and they make bicycles out of titanium. So I feel like I've been downgraded to be put in titanium. But I don't say that. And often I'm back to the same hotel because I'm doing workshops in the same place. I was in this hotel last year, and boy, I had a great time here. This is a wonderful hotel. It's really well managed. Everything is just beautifully efficient. And I'm wondering if you could do something to make this stay as good as my last one. And by now, the smile's getting bigger. And what you're doing is you're making them want to do this and say, you know, my wife's with me and we're coming back from international trip, and look at all this baggage. I mean, if you could upgrade us to a suite, it'd really be a lot more convenient. How often do you think that works? If they got it, you'll get it. So I used to stay at a Marriott in Beijing, a JW Marriott, which is a step up. One of my favorite hotels in the world. There are other hotels that were marginally nicer, but this hotel was great. And the manager became good friends with me. So I spent a lot of time in the executive lounge. I could sit there and drink white wine at night. And I like it I got to like it with ice and soda water because I could sort of drink for a long, long time, kind of spread it out. So one day the lounge manager says, the general manager would like to meet with you. I said, oh, okay, fine. So I said, have him come up to the lounge tomorrow. So Rich came up to the lounge and he and I talked, and I visited there every year for a month at a time, twice. Became good friends. We're still in touch. He's now he's Australian. He's running a hotel in Taiwan. He and I still are in contact, mostly because I convinced him to invest in gold, and he made a lot of money on it. So we still talk anyway. So every time I came, there's like the ultimate room in a hotel. In this particular hotel, there was suites on the top floor. And the nice thing about them is that they had two bathrooms. So Junko and I again have our own bathroom, and it's enormous. And when I came in there, there'd be a bottle of wine in there and a bowl of fruit. And the people who did the turn down service and whatnot, they knew us. They'd bring a bucket of ice. So I'm used to this treatment every time I go. And by the way, there's a place on the position that's more favored. The most favored position is the one that's near the executive lounge, but at the end of the hall, so you don't get any traffic going by it. And hotel professionals know this. They know that room is better than an identical room up at the other end where lots of foot traffic goes by and people will be talking and whatnot. I always got the primo room. So the manager changed, and I got put on the one floor down, no suite, no nothing. So I went to I was still in the executive lounge. That comes with my status. I said, would you tell the new general manager I would like to meet with her? And he says, sure. So I said, could you come up to the lounge tomorrow night and meet with me, say at 5? That's sort of end of her day. Probably she's still here. People like that, you know, they work long hours typically, hotel people anyway. Well, I'll ask her. So she comes up and she's got a person with her, and she's looking really worried. I mean, she's looking like she's going to hear a ration of crap. It was a young woman, probably her first job like this. So she comes in and we sit down, say hello. And I said, I'd just like you to know how much I love this hotel. This hotel is one of my favorite in the world. I know the people in here, they're phenomenal. This hotel's a miracle. So now I've checked the appreciation box. I don't know her, so I can't appreciate her, but I appreciate her hotel. Then I said, I wonder if you could work with me to make my stay here as nice as it's always been. Sure, what can I do? I said, well, I come here twice a year. She didn't know this. I come here twice a year, and I love this hotel so much. I've been to all the hotels in Beijing over the years. This is the place I come. And what I'm accustomed to is getting a room on the top floor of the suite. And also, usually there's a bottle of wine when I come. And that's kind of what I'm accustomed to here. And I wonder if you could continue to do that. Yeah, I can do that. So, well, also you need to know that I appreciate the staff here and I tip generously, and I'll do even more of that. Now throw a little bit of my skin in the game. So we had this dialogue with the 4D request, starting with appreciation and inclusion. So what happened after that is every time I come and go, the whole staff comes out to say goodbye. So the lounge is watching us depart down the hall. They're picking up the phone and calling because I'm walking past the executive lounge. They can see me taking the baggage. They call down. The manager, general manager, and her staff, about 5 people come out and standing there and bowing and greeting us and walking out to the car with us. And when I come in, I hand them my passport, check in, and they say, excuse me a second. They come back and the general manager comes out to meet me and thank me for coming back and all that. So, rather you could take the approach that says, this is a bunch of shit. I'm used to being treated like this. You can't do better. I'm leaving. Instead, you take the approach of the confirmation bias. You appreciate, you include, you hold a vision, then make a request. So, that may sound trivial, but it matters to me, especially if Junko's with me. Usually I'm over there first because she goes to Japan and joins me later. To have the space of again, having our own separate bathrooms, we just like it. We come and go as we want. We only got one bath, so we share that. But if I'm gonna shave or use the toilet in the morning, I do it separately from her. It's just convenient, especially if you've got to leave for a workshop and you've got to sort of do things on schedule. So you can practice it on simple things like that.
Thank you, Charlie, for sharing. Beautiful stories. Thank you.
It works. I mean, it's how hard is this really? This is not. This is not.
Feels really hard.
This is not.
It doesn't feel
Yeah.
hard. It feels
Non-linear.
wonderful.
This is not nonlinear differential equations.
Well, but I mean, I think in my mind, like I can do a 4D request if I genuinely feel appreciation for the person.
Mhm.
If I don't, then I have to dig really deep.
You can appreciate the situation.
Yes, but that still takes like it's
Extra
hard.
effort.
It takes some time. So I'll give you another one that's kind of fun. So I tell this story. My wife and I both like Costco, and until recently, the one was in Superior. It was about 25-minute drive through the city of Boulder. And we walk in the door, and I've now gotten more accustomed to it. But in the early days, she loves to shop. She likes to walk down the aisles and find things. For her, it's like fishing. You sort of throw a lure in the water and see what you get. She walks down the aisles, and to be fair, she often finds something interesting that we didn't know we wanted or needed. And I'm like most men, I want to get in and get out. So we walk in the store, and her energy's increasing, and mine's depleting. On this particular occasion, we're there an hour, and I'm like bored. By the way, now I also bring my e-reader with me, so if I'm really bored, I stand there with the cart and read a book. So that's how I deal with them. And I've learned that she does find interesting things, so I'm patient with it. But in those days, it was just real annoying. So by the time 1 hour later, I'm like so de-energized, I can hardly walk. And she's like singing, okay? So we get in the car, At the time, I had a 7 Series BMW that's a high-speed, quiet car. And I'm driving into Boulder and I'm barely awake. I'm zoned out. And I see the traffic lights behind me, the flashing lights of policemen. So I pull into a little parking space there on the side of the road. And what I realize has happened is the speed limit drops from 65 to 60 to 40 to 35 very quickly. So I blow through at 70 miles an hour. Again, that particular car is designed for the Autobahn, so you're not really aware of the speed so much. He walks up to the thing and hands me says, you speeding this much over, give me a ticket. And I said, thank you very much. And he looks at me a little odd. I was back with a ticket and I said, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. And he looks at me like, what? And I said, yeah, so the truth is that I was zoned out. I was not paying any attention. I was speeding. You're absolutely right. And what I know is that when I get a speeding ticket, I've got a 50% less chance of having an accident for 18 months because I'm going to be more attentive. And you saved me for what could have been a real personal disaster. And my hat's off to people like you who make these kind of contributions to our society. And it's a tough job. And thank you for doing it. I just want you to know that I'm just filled with gratitude that you're doing this. Looks at me really weird, right? And then he walks back to the car. So I got this little form that's supposed to send in $100 check to City of Boulder or whatever. So I write a check, I put it in the envelope, send it off. I get a letter back a week later and says, we have no record of this ticket. So I went back to the car and he tore it up. So I tell this story in China, and my translator, I'm very fond of, happened to be in a job where she came to the US once in a while. So she's driving along in the car with her boss, he's driving. They get pulled over for a speeding ticket. And the boss tries the 4D request. And the guy says, that's a bunch of bullshit. I'm not buying that. And then she speaks up and says, wait a minute, excuse me, sir. This is what he meant to say. And she does it authentically. And he said, you should listen to her more often. And then he tears up the ticket and walks away. So it's like the old expression, authenticity works best when you learn how to fake it.
Yeah.
So my the lady who ran the workshop and paid me, she gets in Beijing, they're strict about traffic parking. So she parks in front of has a driver come and pick her up in front of the hotel and tells them to wait in front there. And the guy comes up and gets a ticket. And the policeman's there writing a ticket. And the guy's arguing in Chinese, bitching, moaning. And the policeman's getting angry and writing the ticket. She walks up and says, excuse me, sir. I just want to know how much we appreciate the fact that you do so much to keep all this burden of traffic from slowing everybody down. And she does the 4D request. And, he was doing as I asked him to. And I've been at this workshop. I came out late. It's raining. I weren't in it. She says, you should listen to her. Tears up the ticket and walks away. So the point is, you got to do this in a way that you really dig deep and have some authenticity for you in that moment to have this work. So Nat, that was about on your feet.
Awesome.
Keep moving. Nice and deep. Very good.
I have a personal trainer for a partner, so
Oh, nice.
ensures my
Yeah.
form is.
Yeah, that's usually expensive
Top-notch.
stuff,
It is. It is. I'm very fortunate.
So was that stuff helpful with this?
Yes,
Indeed.
thank you. Sorry, go ahead. Nat.
I was just agreeing.
And try it out. And if you're forcing it, don't bother. You know, you gotta dig down, and in that moment, I truly was appreciative of that guy. Maybe that takes practice too, to get in the space of, there are a lot of occupations that do valuable things and never get appreciation. I mean, how often do you think anyone ever really thanks a policeman, especially if they're being apprehended for something? And you know, the places where you need good people, and probably, I like to think it probably changed his mindset for a couple days about how he dealt with people. It's all about Gandhi. You must be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah, speaking of occupation, in diplomacy, you quite often have to deal with people who you disagree with, and sometimes disagree.
Yeah.
I don't know what's the word is appropriate here, strongly. So,
You're mad at them because they don't share your storyline.
yeah. So, and the best and the most talented diplomats in the world who really made a history, really they solved this with authenticity. They really believed in what they say. And you can really achieve a lot with diplomatic efforts, but you have to be authentic. That's the key.
Oh,
It's not easy. It's not.
I had a quote from Dean Rusk when he was Secretary of State. He said, "The best tool to persuade is with your ears."
Yeah.
You know, I think, Larissa, there's nothing. I mean, it's right up there with the deepest needs. It's the inclusion need to feel heard. And to the extent you're trying to broadcast, this is my problem. I tend to broadcast my opinion and not really try and, it's an appreciation inclusion mood to let someone feel like you've really heard them. And that requires a lot of patience when you're annoyed and you're sure you're right.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Charlie.
Yeah, those are really important lessons. Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Have you ever been, my question is back to you, have you ever been on a receiving end of someone who is doing it, but not authenticity, without authenticity?
I don't think so. I think most people just don't even ever go to this place. So I've never, there have been people in workshops that said, I don't think that this will work because it's not going to be, they're going to see it as a orchestrated thing. I think that you've got to find some way to feel the appreciation. And I've had times when I couldn't appreciate the person. If I'm angry at them, I can't appreciate them. No way. But you can always appreciate the situation, and especially the one that's making them angry. I appreciate that you're in a tough spot. I appreciate that you got a lot of stress, and I want to help you manage it. Maybe it's practice, or in many ways, I guess I have an easy life, makes it easier than being in the workplace. The workplace, one of the best things about having your own business is you don't have to work with unpleasant people. But in regular jobs, I think the only thing that made NASA sort of easier was that most of the people I dealt with were, PhD physicists and things of that ilk, and they tend to be easier for me to deal with than, say, although I have to say that I've had no problems. So building the house here was probably the most challenging time to build a house that I know of. We had lumber going up by a factor of 2, 3, and 4. No one could get enough qualified people to do the work, and I'm putting the pressure on all the time for the schedule so we can get in here. And again, I went out of my way to appreciate the staff. I set up a little canteen for them and stocked it with things that usually weren't expensive. Sometimes hamburgers, but more often chips and power bars and the like, and kept that full. I put an eating table for them in the middle with chairs. I came in early on and they're eating lunch sitting on the concrete. And I thought, this is crazy. Why should someone have to do that? And they said, well, it's how we're used to it. So I went to Costco and I bought some folding cushion chairs. We still have them. They're all covered with paint and concrete and all that, but they're still there and we still use them in that same place. And went out of my way to appreciate them. And I made found on Amazon a place where I could get a bronze plaque engraved for like $12. So for everybody that did something, I got the little plaque, engraved it and showed it to them. And I gave them titles that I thought were more appropriate. The plumbers, I called them fluid engineers. The graders, I called them earth sculptors. And looked at, and instead of nitpicking what they did, I appreciated the talent. And we got a lot of really, really good people working here. And a lot of them were really moved by the little plaque. They said, you know, this is the first time I can ever imagine where after I'm done, someone's going to remember what I did here. And so make appreciation a habit. And I did it because I truly appreciated them. It was not done to manipulate them. And and they got it. And we got, by and large, really, really good work here.
I'll share a story. Can I share a story? Can I go ahead?
Sure.
This is going to be the first time that I'm going to tell this story. One of the biggest moments, besides, you know, meeting Charlie Peller and others, but Edward de Bono, the father of lateral thinking, you know, he lived on the island of Malta. But I mean, he is world famous and I've read all his books. But he's got this theory, 6 hats. Larissa, I'm pretty sure you know all about Edward de Bono. But 6 hats, so it's like boardroom management, leadership development with the 6 hats kind of thinking, critical thinking, creative thinking, you know, and all the rest, the different thinking ways. And to demonstrate that with the 6 colorful hats, yellow, green for growth and so on, red and black and so on. Anyway, so when he awarded me with that reference award for the Social Innovative Project, he invited me for dinner at his place, which is, I think, it was pretty smart of him, you know, for someone coming from nowhere to invite you for dinner. And I would really want to do something to show my appreciation. And I mean, obviously, I can't buy this guy anything. And I can say, thank you, thank you, thank you. You are wonderful. But I mean, he's so used to it that I think, you know, you have to do something different. So the long and the short is when I came back to South Africa, I mailed him a letter, small pages, and I wrote on all 6 pages. But here's the thing, every page was the color of one of the 6 hats. And he had a good laugh at it, according to his manager. And he enjoyed every page. And he apparently put it up on, you know, above his desk. You know, that's a special story.
Yeah.
That's a gesture which can sometimes then demonstrate your gratefulness without words. And we must remember that non-verbal communication is always more powerful than verbal.
It is.
Thank you.
Gestures are more powerful than words, for sure.
That was a recognition for him. Anyway, that's great. Never told the story to anyone else.
I'm still waiting for my letter.
Hey, Charlie.
Just
Excuse me.
just kidding,
Hey,
Nico.
Charlie.
Just kidding. Well,
One of the concepts that I kind of wanted to go back to, and I don't know if we have time on this call or on a subsequent call, but for some reason, like the notion of confirmation bias and how to leverage that is not clicking for me. And so you've mentioned it several times, and in context, it seems to make sense. But if you were to ask me, like, tell me about confirmation bias and how it works and how you may use that, it's not.
So
I can give you something.
here's how it works, and it's everywhere. Even I'm fond of a channel called Mentor, where a guy does aviation accidents and how they happen, and confirmation bias is usually the cause, or that, or communication breakdown. Confirmation bias is really this simple. What we tend to do is get something in our mind and then selectively gather the evidence to support our viewpoint. So if you have a liberal political bent, you're going to enjoy reading news that supports liberalism, and you're going to look for it, and you're probably going to have a hard time listening to Fox News or Tucker Carlson, all this. You're not going to want to do it. The same thing with the opposite. If you have a conservative bias, you're probably not going to read the New York Times. You're going to read Breitbart News or something like this. So that's how we tend to go. And the thing that's powering this is storylines. And storylines, remember the term homophily? We tend to like people who run storylines. And that's what you're talking about that's the essence of negotiation. The rest you're talking about, you got to be able but by listening, you're acknowledging other people's storylines. You're giving them comfort, and that it looks like that you give the appearance you're agreeing with it when you really aren't, but you give that appearance and you take out the resistance to changing it. And so confirmation bias, you shift storylines to ones that work better for you. And I gave the example of the proposal team with so I think we all can guess the storylines others run about us. In aerospace, I know the storyline the government runs about the contractors, and the contractors know it too. Is that they're just money grubbers. And by the way, these storylines have a lot more to do with projection than they do with what's reality. Projection is the stuff that we imagine other people are thinking. Just as an aside, I worry that we're gonna have a war with China, not because China wants it, because the U.S. is so accustomed to making wars that we imagine that they're gonna make war on us. So the idea of confirmation bias is you sort of find a way to rummage the storylines that are harmful to what you want to do out and insert new ones in. So when they wrote their proposal and they understood this, page 1, that they said we're interested in the science, because they knew that the government people were scientists. That's what they wanted also. So the way they dealt with the confirmation bias is they put a storyline they knew would appeal to the government, that we're interested in science also. Now, how did they make it credible? They had a photograph of each of the team leaders and a little personal statement that each of them generated about the science they most cared about. So the confirmation bias was to take and remove a storyline that was in play but harmful, and put in one that's in play that's beneficial. So that's basically how it works. So you want to change. So take another example that might be fun. One of my most interesting workshops was one of the last ones I did in China, which was at the Volkswagen plant. And it was about the fact that the Chinese and the Germans are at each other's throats. And this is easy to imagine. Germans believe in rules, and Chinese believe in practicality. So they see past each other. So how do you get them to come together? You find storylines that they can share. And so instead of running the storyline, the Germans are anal assholes, which is what the Chinese are running, something like that. And the Germans are busy running the story. Chinese can't organize enough to do anything right. They gotta take shortcuts all the time. You plug in new storylines and put them in the forefront. We want to work together to build economical cars, so it's good for the country and good for us. So it's a matter of shifting storylines. It's a matter of taking storylines that create conflict and disagreement and shoving in storylines that create collaboration. And finding storylines, it's back to the shared interest exercise, the storylines that both parties share and are beneficial. So that's the basic idea, is you want to put in things that would not confront the other person's viewpoint, but support a mutually beneficial viewpoint. That's the confirmation bias game. And we all do it.
Just a comment again. This is exactly what tomorrow and Thursday will be about. And I'm seeing people tomorrow, that is like the whites in South Africa. On Thursday, it will be the blacks. But it means those storylines, and exactly, you can, like the Germans and the Chinese.
Yeah, yeah.
But how to figure it out in South Africa, it's always a challenge, you know, how to get the stories so that each can recognize and learn more from the other.
Well, the way I did it in that workshop, of course, is I didn't do anything except ask them. I didn't, there's another thing, I didn't tell them anything. I just said, what do the Chinese want that you didn't want for them also? And let them do the work. And it's their work. And then the opposite on the other side, and then show them the work, and they go, I mean, they're almost in tears when they saw how much they both wanted, that neither of them. I think, you know, the natural move to conflict is probably an evolutionary advantage. I think, you know, our genus Homo's been around for 2 million years. Homo sapiens, our particular brand of it's been around about 130,000 years. And one of our triumphs was we annihilated the Neanderthals, who were bigger, stronger, and smarter after we had sex with them. I've got like 3% Neanderthal genes in me. So how did we do that? We did that with social things, social tribalism. And tribalism has at its core this conflict. Was this expression from the Middle East, me against my brother, me and my brother against the others, me and my brother and others against the others, bigger others. So the idea of conflict is kind of built in a survival mode. And so to get past that, you've got to take some steps to replace the naturally arising combative stories, which are there for survival over 130,000 years, and replace them with things that require some effort to do. I was in Australia explaining this and having lunch with the HR director at one of the big antennas down there. She said, "You're asking people to do unnatural acts." And I said, "Yeah, I am." Which has another meaning than, yeah. So it's not natural. It's natural to focus on the conflict. It's natural to fight, because that's how we got here. So you got to do some effort. And I think the inquiry, instead of what are you doing that makes me mad, someone attack you, well, what is it that you want that I can want for you also? And it's got to be intentional and deliberate. And I've never seen it fail to reduce conflict. It's all back to storylines and emotions when you're through, and shifting the storylines. Does this make sense? Does this help?
Yeah, it's been kind of a fun little walk down memory lane. I'm like, oh, I remember that presentation. Now it's like it's slowly starting to make connections. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Charlie. And if and when we will have time, hands-on activity, so to speak, really makes a good, so beneficial. So if we would review some case studies for how to get out of the drama state sometime in the future, that would be really helpful from my perspective. So
I think in the early days, I was so caught up in this that I literally did the two-step to get out of the blamer. And I kind of didn't walk across the room, but I kind of demonstrated that with the example of the overspeed and getting angry at the people who cut in front of me, and how I think the blamer is the one that's most difficult, because when you're in there, you're absolutely wrong and absolutely certain.
yeah.
Okay. I think each one has its own little trick. The rescuer get out of the field. The rationalizer recognize that what you say, if you say it doesn't matter over and over, that means it does. Acknowledge that. The victim is about turning complaints into requests. So I use the example of my boss doesn't, if you find yourself complaining, you're a victim. My boss doesn't listen to me. And you got two choices: forget about it or turn it into a 4D request. So each one has its own trick. So you need never complain. I think that's a straightforward one. I think the rescuer, you leave the field, get clear. I think the rationalizer, you just sit and say, yes, if I'm saying it doesn't matter over and over, that means it matters. And the blamer is the toughest one, because you've got to go to the place of acknowledge your role and find that role. It's always there. And
Yeah.
I did it on stage in real time. When I hear blaming, I work to pull that tooth, and it's always there.
Yeah, thank you.
all. See you next week.
See you next
Thank you.
week. Thank you.
Next week. Have a great
I appreciate all of you.
Everybody be safe. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Bye.